The conditional starting point for the division of Ukraine and the beginning of its differences, which are still felt today, can be traced back to the uprising of Bogdan Khmelnytsky against the rule of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in Ukrainian lands. At the time of the uprising, a significant part of modern-day Ukraine was part of Poland, with only small territories in the east belonging to the Russian Empire, and the southern part of Ukraine mainly under the control of the Crimean Khanate. Returning to the uprising, it was primarily motivated by religious factors. Orthodox Slavs were heavily oppressed by the Polish government. Orthodoxy was under prohibition, and Eastern Slavs were pressured to convert to Catholicism, which carried privileges within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And a compromise faith, known as Greek Catholicism, was created, preserving Orthodox ritual but acknowledging the authority of the Pope. In addition to religious motives, there were several socio-political factors. The uprising of Bogdan Khmelnytsky resulted in the de facto division of the main Ukrainian territories. Khmelnytsky, despite initial success in the rebellion, soon faced defeats and realized that he could not succeed without external support. Consequently, he sought the support of the Russian Tsardom. Again, a common faith was a crucial factor. The agreement between the Hetmanate and Russia took the form of a protectorate, which ultimately evolved into the annexation of Ukrainian territory by Russia. There is some dispute regarding the extent of the Hetmanate's dependence on Russia due to the terms of this agreement. Nonetheless, in the end, the left bank of Ukraine remained under Russian control, while the right bank remained within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Interestingly, the city of Kiev, initially supposed to return to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, remained under Russian control and did not change hands. It's essential to note that within the Cossack Hetmanate itself, there were numerous disagreements about governance, administrative structure, and foreign policy. This led to a civil war on the territory of the Hetmanate, involving Russia, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and the Ottoman Empire. It can be said that Ukrainian lands were effectively divided between Russia and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Despite the eventual absorption of the Hetmanate and the reduction of its autonomy, the left bank of Ukraine, particularly after the uprising of Ivan Mazepa, was in a much better position than the right bank. Once again, returning to the question of faith, Orthodoxy was the primary religion in the Russian Empire. At the same time, the persecution of Orthodox believers in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth continued. The next pivotal moment in Ukrainian history was the partition of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth at the end of the 18th century. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, pressured by many countries, was weakening with each passing year, nearing its destruction by the late 18th century. European countries, particularly Russia, Prussia, and Austria, took advantage of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth weakness and partitioned its lands. Concerning the Ukrainian territories, the east part of Ukraine became part of Russia, while the modern western Ukraine became part of Austria and remained so until the empire's dissolution. It's worth noting that around the same time, the Russian Empire annexed lands from the Crimean Khanate, a significant portion of which is now part of Ukraine. However, these new lands were predominantly settled by Russians. The central and eastern parts, part of the Russian Empire, adopted Russian practices across various areas, including socio-political practices and religious matters. The first half of the 19th century saw this region as crucial for the development of Ukrainian culture, making the rise of Ukrainian movements. However, the growth of the national Ukrainian movement raised concerns for the Russian monarchs, as it posed a separatist threat. This led to restrictions on the use of the Ukrainian language. The most notable of these restrictions was the Amnesty Case of 1876, which limited the publication of literature, educational activities, and theatrical performances in the Ukrainian language, and this language could only be used for personal purposes. Western Ukraine under Austrian rule naturally inherited the experiences of the various nations living in the empire, particularly the Austrians, who were the titular nation, and the Poles, who lived on the same lands as Ukrainians since the time of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Regarding the development of Ukrainian culture, Western Ukraine became a central hub for this during the latter half of the 19th century. While the Russian Empire was pressuring Ukrainians, Austria, due to revolutions in Europe, expanded the rights of small nations. Legal Ukrainian publications and political parties emerged, primarily in the West, where these developments took place. The rise of the Ukrainian national movement began in the early 20th century, when attempts were made to create a Ukrainian national state both in the western and the rest of the territories. During the Russian Revolution, the Ukrainian People's Republic was established, and its existence was closely tied to Germany. The Central Powers even recognized its independence. However, the republic in its full form did not last long and did not have control over all the claimed territories. In the western part of Ukraine, an independent republic was also proclaimed during the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It survived even shorter than the Ukrainian People's Republic. However, the two countries managed to sign an act of unification. The future fate of Ukraine was once again linked to divisions between its western and eastern parts. As a result of the Soviet-Polish War, a large part of what is modern-day Ukraine was divided between Soviet Ukraine and Poland, and some lands went to Romania and Czechoslovakia. Initially in Soviet Ukraine, there was a policy called indigenization, which was beneficial for the development of the Ukrainian people. It led to the opening of Ukrainian language schools and publications, and the Ukrainian language began to permeate all spheres of life. This policy meant that only local people were governing Ukrainian land. However, by the early 1930s, this policy was phased out and replaced by a process of Russification. The western part of Ukraine fared better, although there were processes of displacing the Ukrainian language and the Polonization of the population. After Joseph Pilsudski's coup, whose goal was to establish an authoritarian regime in Poland and restore Polish independence, there were purges of Ukrainian nationalists. Attitudes towards Orthodoxy were in many ways as negative as they were in the Soviet Ukraine. Orthodox churches were liquidated and closed, but by that time, a significant portion of Ukrainians had converted to Catholicism or Greek Catholicism. The formation of the modern territory of Ukraine was completed by the mid-20th century. As a result of the division of Poland in 1939, the western part of Ukraine became part of Soviet Ukraine. In 1940, northern Bukovina and Bessarabia were added, and in 1945, Transcarpathia. The last territory to join Ukraine was Crimea in 1954. As we can see, the historical experiences of western and eastern Ukraine are significantly different. If the eastern and central parts were under Russian influence in the 17th and 18th centuries, which influenced their perception of the Russian language and orthodoxy, the western part had been under Polish and Austrian rule for many centuries, with the Catholic faith and European way of life and thinking. Western Ukraine tried to become independent of Russia for less than half a century, and within such a short time frame, there could not be significant shifts in social and cultural terms. That's it for now, thank you for watching, don't forget to like and comment this video, see you.